Well, hello, RaNae Merrill. Welcome to Sewing and Slippers with Sue.
Hi, Sue. It's really good to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to join me today.
What a pleasure. You know what, RaNae? It was really, really wonderful to run into you at the quilt show down on Cape Cod a couple of weeks ago. And a lot has happened to you since, but it was just a fabulous opportunity for us to reconnect.
It really was. It was so surprising to see you walk in there. It was such a last minute decision for me to do the show, and I didn't know who was going to be there. And when you were there, it's like we hadn't talked in so long, and you've always been such an enthusiastic supporter of what I've been doing. And it was so great to see what you've been doing too, all the beautiful applique work that you're doing, like those beautiful quilts I can see in your
Oh,
background.
thank you.
So
Thank
yeah, and I guess I never really connected before that we're neighbors. I mean, to me, Boston, that's like, hop, skip, and a jump from New York. So
Well, I tell you what, my sons are in New York with my husband today.
are they?
They
Oh,
are, and
over and they can like say hi to us.
I considered coming down and doing this live with you in the same room.
Why didn't you tell me? That would have been a blast.
I have two programs this afternoon, so I couldn't be away from my sewing room for the whole day. But
Yeah,
we're
and
going
you
to
know
do that
what?
another time.
Yes, we will. And I would lend you my sewing room, but the magic of camera angles is that you can only see this much.
Exactly. So yes, Timmy, Jason, and Jeffrey are heading down to a Yankees game today, and they just love baseball in general. They're not necessarily Yankee fans, but they love to go to every stadium possible. They have a trip planned to go to Wrigley Field in Chicago, so they just love to travel around and
So
take
they
in
were
baseball.
so being from Boston, are you guys Red Sox fans?
Well, I am, but my husband is from Montreal and
Oh.
he is not a Red Sox fan. And my son has been a Yankees fan since he was a little boy. I don't know what went wrong.
Remember the year that the Red Sox finally won the World Series? I had a grad student from Boston living with me at the time,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was, I was really happy for the Red Sox. I mean, that whole drama of, the curse of the babe and all of that, it was
I know.
so great to see that happen. And in such a decisive way. I mean, do you remember the scores of those games? It was like 14-0.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like all the host of heaven just decided and said, come down and say, okay, we're finally giving it to the Red Sox. And they
In a big way.
wiped out the Yankees, and being a New Yorker, I had to love it.
Yeah. Hey, not all New Yorkers would side with you. But hey, so I just found out when we were down on the Cape that you live full time in New York City, right downtown in Manhattan. That's amazing.
I do, but I travel so much that I'm not here very much. But when I am here, it's just really good to be here. I almost feel kind of like a tourist sometimes, and it's just a real treasure to be home when I get to be home.
Yes, excellent. So what are you traveling around doing? Where are you all the time?
Quilt shows,
Okay, so you're
guilds, and stores. And so like this fall, well, this month I was supposed to be in Alaska, and those events got canceled, so I'm not in Alaska. But it's kind of a good thing that I ended up being here, because a couple of weeks ago I ended up having emergency surgery.
Oh, I know. I couldn't believe it when you called me after our wonderful trip to the Cape. You ended up having surgery that like the next
The
day.
next day, yes, I got home from Cape. I was camping in Cape Cod that whole week. Lovely, lovely weather, lovely time. It was just gorgeous. Got home Friday night. Saturday night, I was in the ER.
Oh my
Perfect timing. My look. If it had happened a day earlier, it turns out that the recuperation time is 6 weeks, and my next event was 6 weeks from the day I had the surgery. So, like, my guardian angels were definitely taking care of me here. Like
absolutely.
if it had to happen, it happened on exactly the day that it needed to happen on.
And RaNae, that's something else that I found out about you. You are a woman of faith, as I am, and I appreciate your positive outlook. You're always looking on the bright side of things. That's something that really connects us and brings us together. And you were even sharing with me a book that you're reading that's all about positivity in your life. And I love that.
You want
Um,
me to pop it up here and just show you guys what it is?
sure. What are you reading?
It's called The Power of Fun. by Catherine Price.
I'm writing it down, The Power of Fun.
I picked it up at an airport a few weeks ago, and sometimes we just get working so hard and we get so ground down into everything that we need to do. And just life in general, we get so into our phones and everything else. And she really does this analysis of what really is the kind of fun that really builds our soul. And she really talks about building your life around this kind of soul affirming fun. She has 3 words that she uses to describe what she calls true fun: um, connection, playfulness, and flow. And it's interesting because flow, as creative people, we can pop ourselves into flow with a snap of fingers, right? We can sit there for hours and not even realize that the time has passed because we're
Yes.
having so much fun quilting. And playfulness is something that, we kids are really good at, but adults not so much. But the other thing that's so important in this sort of trifecta of true fun is connectedness, and like really getting into this place of fun with other people. And it's really it's coming at a time in my life when I'm just really examining a lot of things about how I'm living my life. And in reflecting back, I think I told you a little bit earlier, I spent last week, I had to take a bunch of boxes out of my storage, and some of those boxes were old journals that go back decades. And I've been going back and reading some of those journals. And it's just, it felt like somehow I've been this month is kind of like between the physical stuff and the emotional stuff. It just kind of feels like a whole life reset. I think every now and then we go through these periods where it's like, I gotta change something.
Yeah. And
And I
usually
feel like,
it's one of these life-changing events, like you going in for surgery, that brings that on.
yeah,
And
and it was routine surgery. It was nothing, nothing life-threatening or anything like that. But still, as they're rolling you down the hall on the gurney, and you suddenly realize that you are absolutely 100% out of control of what's going to happen to you in the next couple of hours.
yeah.
And there have been many times, I think, over the last few years where we all have been in situations that are completely out of our control. And when life is going absolutely bonkers and you have no control over it, finding the things that you do have control of, even if it's just, being the person who invites the neighbors over for a card game,
Yeah.
you can control these moments where you can find joy, or you look for the delight in a, or the humor in a moment, or just looking up for your phone and smiling at somebody as you're walking down the street. I mean, she talks about really becoming aware of these moments where you feel connected. And sometimes they're microscopic, and sometimes they're, a wedding, and it's, overwhelming and overarching, and it takes up an entire day or an entire weekend. But they are all part of finding these moments of fun in your life that make your life feel like it's worth living.
Oh, I love that, RaNae, that whole sense of connectedness, finding fun. I love what you said about that. And it brings us back to our quilting, doesn't it? Because
Because that's what
I feel
well, because we love it. And we have
yes,
so
and
much
I feel
fun.
so connected to you and to my students, and that sense of connection, even though we're doing this via Zoom and we are 3.5 hours away from each other, that connection can really come through even though we're not together in person, although there's no substitute for that personal contact. I love it.
Yeah.
So you were sharing something else that you do in your life that really spoke to me. We had a brief conversation earlier today when we were just setting up our event for today. And I'd love for you to share that with our quilters out there and our creatives out there, that there's something that you do every day that helps you to bring more fun into your life. Can you share that with our quilters?
Oh, are you talking about the menu?
The menu.
The menu. Okay, well, this is something fairly new that I started doing. I'll just pop this onto tabletop so you can see this.
Okay, and I'm going to share that with everyone.
Okay, where is my table? Oh wait, wrong one. That's not what I want. I want Yeah, if you'll highlight the tabletop, that's what I'm so used to being the one to highlight there. I was like,
There
looking
you
for the
go.
highlight button. I can't control that. You do. Um, so this is actually something new that I've started doing recently, but it's kind of a new take on a to-do list. I came up with this idea of first of sort of it kind of came out of like seeing a big piece of paper in on my mind, like a big piece of paper on my tabletop, and like little boxes in where I could put things that are important to me or things that I want to accomplish. And then I kind of brought it down to paper size here.
Okay, so what's on this paper? What's inside those boxes?
Okay, so my boxes, like some of these are things that I have to do for my business, and sometimes some things are for myself. Like what this one here says, plan and do administrative stuff for upcoming events. That's like that can be a really, obnoxious to-do list. But
Yeah.
here's one over here that says clean up messes. This
Okay.
one says creative. This one says marketing and video, social media. This one is accounting, bookkeeping, inventory, investing. This one is piano. This one is personal care, fun, and exercise. And this one is social. And I think like each one of these things is an area of my life where, you kind of need to keep up with what's going on. And I mean, if I made a to-do list of this, it would be hundreds of items long and it would be just so obnoxiously overwhelming. And just,
Absolutely.
you just want to go stick your head under the pillow when you see it. But what changes this list is what I wrote at the top and what I wrote at the bottom. The top says, because I've really, like you said, I've had several incidents this year where I've, faced the prospect of my own mortality, but it's also kind of asked me, kind of awakened me to how am I living my days? And, when things get really tough, it's really easy for us to kind of go hide in something. I mean, we can go quilt, but, and that's fun, but sometimes it's hiding from other things.
Okay.
Or we can zone out in a movie. And I realized that, I think more than ever than this year, I've realized that life is short. We don't, I am now in my early 60s, which means, if I'm fortunate, I have another 30 years. And given how fast the last 60 have gone by, those last 30 are going to go by in a heartbeat. So
Yes.
finally, I don't want to miss out on things that are important to me because I'm tired and zoning out, or because I'm doing something just purely to shut out something that's uncomfortable. And
Okay. So
so,
what is the top and the bottom?
so what I wrote here at the top was, let me see if I can zoom this in. How would I like to say at the end of today that my life was joyful and meaningful?
Oh, I love that.
And
How?
I just wrote some things here. I said, I helped people be more creative. I took care of my body. I got closer to debt freedom. Those were my things for today. Okay.
Excellent.
And so then then in these boxes, I've written, different things that I want to accomplish. And some of them are things I have to do today, and I'll kind of highlight those. But other things are things that projects that I'm working on or that I want to be working on. And rather than think of this as a to-do list, it's kind of like a menu.
I see that you wrote menu of joy on the side. What
I
a
put
great
that there
menu.
after we talked this morning, but that's because that's what it occurred to me when this is kind of like a menu. So I find myself now when I'm sitting down in the chair and I'm kind of like, oh, or, I've got 20 minutes or I've got half an hour or whatever. And, you know, instead of zoning out, I can look at this and go, oh, you know what? I could just as easily zone out and balance a bank statement. I could put on a movie and watch it and balance a bank statement with the movie in the background, right?
Yeah.
And when I put it in terms of this is something that's going to make my life more joyful because it brings organization, it brings financial control, it
Mhm.
brings, just peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you think of balancing a bank statement, not as something that you have to do, but as something that makes your life more joyful, it's easy to choose that. And it
I
doesn't
love
feel like a
that.
burden to do it. And
So
then
what's on the bottom of this list? I love
well,
that you are
something,
finding.
sometimes what makes the day joyful and meaningful turns out to be something very different than you set out to do at the beginning of the day.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think that in any day, there are always, even if it's just sometimes microseconds, in any day, there are moments of delight and joy. And if you are looking for them, you will find them and savor them. I love to write haiku. Okay. In fact, I'm doing a book on haiku quilts, and that's a whole other thing we can talk about some other time. But the other day it was pouring rain outside. I looked over at my windowsill, and my plants on the windowsill were wilting because they hadn't been watered. And yet it's pouring rain outside, right? And I just thought, well, this is really ironic. And then this haiku popped into my mind, which was rain outside, the wilting houseplants on my windowsill,
Mm.
you know? And you know, and it's like, and of course I then felt really bad for the plants, and I went and got water and I watered them. But at the same time, in that moment, there was like kind of this little insight into my nature and you and the nature outside. And I don't know, like haiku for me are like these little moments of joy.
I love it.
And I got like tremendous joy out of hearing the rain and seeing my wilted houseplants. Now, you know, if we're in a mindset of, oh my gosh, I don't have control over my life, things, everything's overwhelming, there's too much to do, we can look at that and say, oh my gosh, you know, just
One more
one
thing I did
more thing I
wrong.
didn't get right, one more thing I did wrong. But I looked at it and went, oh look, a haiku. All right, so now I wrote down the haiku and then went and watered the plants. And now I remember that moment with joy instead of with this sinking feeling of I'm not good enough, and even the plants are letting me know. Right?
Oh, I love it. I love it. So,
So
oh my goodness, RaNae, I could talk about your positive mindset for hours because I thrive on other people who want to find the goodness in other people and the joy in life. And I'm so excited that we have reconnected because I really feel as though you happened in my life at the right time for a reason. But what I want to talk about, because this is a quilting show, I want everybody to know who you are, not only as a person, and this has been such a nice insight into who you are as a person, but who you are as a quilter and what type of joy you bring into quilters' lives. So I would love to share a little bit more of your professional life and what you're doing now in the quilting world. So tell me a little bit about where you are now.
well, what's been really kind of dominating my life for the last 6 or 7 years is free motion mastery in a month. If you, it is, you know, it started out as it came out of a moment of frustration.
Okay.
Um, I knew that I wanted to learn to do machine quilting, and so I went to a friend of mine who has won many awards and had written some books, and I said, "What do I do?" And she told me how to make templates and mark my quilt, and I spent 2 weeks like making templates and cutting out lines with X-Acto knives and laminating things with packing tape.
Ugh.
And I marked my quilt, and just I worked so hard on this thing, and of course, I did everything that the master told me to do. So, I'm a pretty adept person, a lot of times. I catch things pretty quickly. So I went very confidently forward with this and quilted in dark purple thread on light yellow fabric.
Oh,
In fact, this is if you can pop this on, this is one of my tests for that
okay.
quilt.
Okay, so this is a complex pattern because you've got straight lines going into curved lines.
Yes, but
Got
what
some
I want you to
stippling
look
in
at
there.
here, look at how wobbly.
Oh, some wiggly lines, right?
I mean, the whole, like every line of quilting on this quilt looked like it wanted to shrivel up and die, and that's exactly how I felt inside.
So RaNae, is this your first
This was
test
my
of
first.
machine quilting?
Yes. And so, I mean, clearly I was not happy about this. And
Yeah.
I think all quilters, we can be very critical of ourselves. I know with my students, they'll look at something and the first thing out of their mouth is, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Well, 95% of what they did was perfectly right, and I'll talk about that a little bit later because it's a really important thing about how we use our minds that makes us learn or not learn. But anyway, I did this whole quilt. I just felt like it was a disaster. It went away. I don't have a picture of it. I couldn't look at it. And I just said, well, I need to figure this out.
Mm.
How do I get comfortable with free motion quilting? So my next strategy was to go to my stash and I pulled out some large print fabric and I made some blocks and I put them by the sewing machine and I said, I'm just going to outline a block a day.
Okay.
Okay.
A block
Just
a day. I love the strategy.
it's won't take too long. It's doable. I can finish a block. It's, manageable steps toward my goals. Well, after a week and a half, I still looked like this, wibbly wobbly stuff all over the place. And I can remember the time of day. I can remember where I was sitting. This thought went through my head. RaNae, you're a concert pianist. You do complicated things with your hands all the time.
Exactly. That's something that people didn't know about you. You're a concert pianist.
Yes, that is, and that is where my whole approach to free motion quilting started, right there, with this realization that I do complicated things with my hands all the time. And I was teaching piano and I know how to teach people how to do complicated things with their hands. And I've had a lot of experience and training in learning theory and learning techniques. And so the minute that my quilter brain and my piano brain at that moment started talking to each other. And
Ah,
I immediately felt things that I knew how to do in the piano area of my life connect to what I was trying to do in my quilting life. It was a very weird feeling. It was like through my, it was,
everything lined up.
I mean, like you could almost feel the electrical, the neurons reconnecting in my brain. It was kind of
Wow.
amazing. Um, but that was the moment that I got this idea that you could break learning free motion quilting down into a block a day, that you could find the things that you already know. And then not too long after that, I came up with the idea that there are 6 basic shapes that build all quilting designs. I just had this sheet out here. Where did it go?
Well,
Yeah.
I have my sheet because I pulled out your free motion mastery in a month
Oh,
program,
there you go. Okay, great. So
and I haven't done it. I've read about your approach. I've read your book, but I haven't done the work.
well, we're just going to have to get you started.
Absolutely. So can you please get me started?
Yes.
What do
Um,
I do with these 6 basic shapes?
I'm going to show you in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, if you look at those 6 basic shapes, there's a straight line, a C curve, a circle, a teardrop, an S curve, and a spiral. And if you take any quilt at any point in history, by any level of quilter, you will see that the designs on that quilt are all made from some combination of these 6 shapes. So if you think of this like an alphabet, and you can quilt these 6 basic shapes, you can build them into any design.
Okay, now I would have to prove that out because I'm a scientist and I need evidence of that. You're telling me that every single quilting design that was ever done can be broken down into these 6 basic shapes.
I mean, it really is even simpler than that. Basically, any design of any kind, anywhere in the universe,
Not just quilting designs.
architecture, art, electronics, whatever, is a combination of straight lines and curves. I mean, you could just take it down to a straight line and a curve. If you can quilt those 2 shapes, you could combine them. But with quilting, we have these certain idioms like teardrops and spirals that we use a lot. So I included some more of these, more common idiomatic shapes that we use. But yes, if you go look at any quilt, I mean, I hand this sheet out at shows and I just say, people, take this and hold it up to the quilts you're looking at as you walk around the show, and you will see every single pattern.
Well, that is absolutely brilliant. And I just got a long arm. Does this apply to domestic machine quilting and long arm quilting and any type of quilting?
Any machine. I have taught this on everything from a featherweight to a gamble. And last year, I even had people bring treadle machines to my classes in Minnesota.
Wow.
Because, and here's the thing, this is what makes it so cool. All right. And it's funny because there's certain things about the way that I teach free motion quilting now that, I wrote this 7 years ago and I'm still discovering things in it that I didn't realize that I was doing at the time. And when I realize them, I go, man, this, all my life, I've always followed these sort of little wild crazy thoughts, these little breadcrumbs. You know, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, throws them my way, and I always follow them. And I think more so than anything else I've done with this book, I mean, just the more I use it and the more I teach it, the more I see in it. And I just think there's no way I could have thought of half of this stuff when I first wrote the book. There's so much inspiration in this. But so here's the thing that I realized most recently about this that I think is so, so important. Free motion quilting is motion. It's motion.
Yes.
And in order to be able to do free motion quilting, you must be able to move your body in these 6 basic shapes. If you see a design and you draw the design, your brain knows it and your eyes know it, but until your body knows how to move through those shapes, you cannot write it. You cannot quilt it. If I showed you a haiku in Japanese, right, you might be able to read it if you knew a little Japanese, right? But you couldn't write it until you knew how to write those characters. And that's where I would say 99% of free motion quilting falls flat. And I'm not pointing it. I know that's saying a lot. That's like saying the whole free motion quilting world is wrong. But here's the thing. If your body can't move it, you can't quilt it.
So how do we train our body to move it? How do we do that?
We're gonna do a little lesson on this. Okay.
Okay.
And
I better get out of my chair because I think I need to be in motion, right?
So usually when people go to a free motion quilting class, the teacher shows them a pattern and then demonstrates it and then tells them to draw it and then tells them to quilt it, and then they can't quilt it, and she says, oh, it takes a whole lot of practice, just go home and practice.
Yes. Oh,
And
I've done so many times.
Yeah, and it just you end up spending time and money and you're worse off than when you started, because now you're even more frustrated because you took this class that you thought was going to help and it didn't. So the problem is that you're starting from your brain and your eyes. What I do in Free Motion Mastery 9 Months is I start with your body. And this comes out of my experience teaching young children in music classes. Okay. So if you have the first edition of the book, which is what you have, Sue, the quilting yoga is not in it, but the second edition of the book has quilting yoga at the beginning of every one of these. And
quilting yoga. Did I hear that right?
You did.
Quilting yoga?
Uh-huh.
I love yoga, but I've
Okay.
never done quilting yoga.
Well, it's not exactly, I mean, there's no yogi on earth that would recognize these, but I did these one time in a lecture. It was a very spur of the moment thing. I just walked onto the stage and I was going to teach about the 6 basic shapes. And I kind of thought to myself, how can I make people really remember them? And the crazy thought that went through my mind was have them stand up and do them with their whole body. So I did.
Here I am.
Yes, you did it. I got up and I gave this whole lecture off the cuff, like spouting all this stuff like I've been doing it my whole life. And this woman came up afterwards. She goes, that was fantastic. It was like quilting yoga. And so that's what I started to call it.
Perfect.
And so each one, when I'm teaching you a pattern, there's 3 steps in the process. The first one is quilting yoga, where we train the rhythm and speed, and we learn the shape with your whole body. And in some cases, we use the big muscles of your body to teach your little muscles how to do it. Can you put me on, not tabletop, but put me on the stand-up thing? Because we're going to do this together. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
So step 1 is we're going to do this quilting yoga where we learn the shape, we learn the pattern, we learn the rhythm with our whole body.
Okay.
The second step is we're going to do something, we're going to use a trainer tool and tracing sheets to mimic how our hands move at the sewing machine so that we learn the muscle memory and the coordination without having to fight with the machine at the same time. And then the third thing is, once you're familiar with it, I ask you to draw it, and that creates a map of the mind, of the pattern in your mind. So these 3 steps give you rhythm and speed, they give you muscle memory and coordination, and they give you a map. Now, by learning each one of those things individually, your brain learns it very quickly instead of trying to figure out which of the 3 pieces go together. When you sit down at your sewing machine then to quilt this, your body knows what to do, your brain knows what to do, and you can quilt the pattern instantly. And nobody
okay.
Try it. It can't possibly work, but it does.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do today in this together is I'm going to take you through I'm going to teach you a pattern called straight line stippling. And we're going to do these 3 steps: quilting yoga, tracing, and drawing. And then I'll play a little video for you to quilt this. But I love this pattern for beginners because it's not hard to do. It looks great. And it takes absolutely no skill at all. So it's kind of a great warm up if you're just getting warmed up for the day, if you're an experienced quilter, or it's a great way to get started, getting your rhythm and getting your speed and all of that when you're quilting. So we're going to start off with quilting yoga for straight line. Okay. And to do that, we're going to put our hands in quilting yoga position. Now, this is really important. We're going to overlap your thumbnails like this. And the reason for this is because when your dominant hand is connected to your non-dominant hand, it's going to teach it how to work with it. Okay.
Okay.
If you do this, then your brain has to tell two different hands what to do. And sorry, folks, but our non-dominant hands are clueless most of the time. But if you put them together now, big sister is holding hands with little sister, and they learn to work together. Your brain sends one signal down, and this, they kind of pass the information along. So we connect our hands like this. If you're going to hold your fabric at a domestic or a sit-down long arm, you're going to put your hands flat. Sue, since you have a long arm, put your hands the way you would hold your handlebars. And I know it's probably a little closer than your handlebars, but keeping those hands, those fingers attached is important for this. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're going to start off doing something that you've all practiced for many hours. If you have kids, you've done the fussy baby rock. I don't have kids, but I have younger siblings. So
yes.
all I'm doing is shifting my weight from side to side, right? And this rhythm, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. If your kids are all gone, you probably find yourself doing this in the grocery store line. Okay? But the thing is that glide is the perfect speed for a smooth flowing line with your quilting. So it's fast enough to be smooth and slow enough to be in control. So that's your quilting line right there, that glide. And then when you get to the stop side, what?
I love it.
Yeah. See, you've been practicing free motion quilting your whole life and you didn't know it. Exactly. Now you know. Okay? So when you get to the stop point over here, you're there just long enough for your machine to take 2 stitches. So it's glide and stop. And those 2 stitches are really important because that's how you anchor a sharp point. If you don't take those 2 stitches, then you're going to curve around and you're not going to have a sharp point. Okay. So our rhythm is glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. And that, my friends, is the perfect rhythm and speed for quilting. And you've known it your whole life.
Wow.
All right. So now what we just practiced was a horizontal line. Now we're going to do a vertical line. Same thing. Just start from your belly button and go glide and stop, glide and stop. Okay. Just go forward and back like that. And that's going to give you a nice smooth vertical line because when you use your whole arm to do it, your arm keeps the line steady. Okay. So now we have horizontal and vertical lines. Okay. Now let's do some diagonal lines. And this is where we're going towards our pattern. All you do for this one is you do glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, right? In different directions. Just randomly choose different directions. So glide and stop, 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 glide and stop. Now, even if you're sitting down, you're still going to move your arms in this rhythm, right? Because it gives you the perfect rhythm and speed for quilting. All right. So these diagonal lines, let's look at what those would look like on the tabletop. Sue's going to put us over onto the tabletop now.
Yes.
Okay, where did my sheet go? I had this all set up and ready to go. And of course, now it has to be right here, right?
It has to be.
On table?
Take your time.
Got it. Found it. Okay,
okay, good. I'm going to unspotlight your face so we're just seeing your screen.
So these little gizmos here are just pieces of shelf liner, and I stick them under here. I also use them under my fingers when I'm quilting because they keep my hands from sliding around. Okay. Now, this thing here is one of the tracing sheets that you'll find in the Free Motion Mastery book and also in the toolkit that comes with it. The ones that come in the toolkit have a dry erase laminate because sometimes I'm just going to ask you to write right on the sheet. But remember I said step 2 was going to be tracing. So here's the trainer tool. And it does several other things, but for our purposes right now, there's a dot right here in the middle. I'm going to take that dot. Imagine that dot is your needle. You're going to put your hands. So this would be for you. I would put your hands this way because you want to mimic how you hold your handlebars on your sewing machine. But for anybody else, if you're going to hold your fabric, then you're going to put your hands this way, kind of in a box around there. And then all we're going to do is move that dot along the line. Glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. Let me zoom it in a little bit better so you can see. Okay, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. So I did exactly the same thing that I was doing a minute ago when I was air quilting, right? But now I'm doing it at a size and scale that I would do on a quilt. And my hands are mimicking how they're going to move at the sewing machine. So this gives me a chance to learn the muscle memory and the coordination between the hands without fighting with the machine at the same time. And it doesn't take a lot of this to get this. I mean, for most people, it literally only takes 2 or 3 times through it, and they can do this. If you take a little bit more, don't worry, we're all a little different. But the idea is that you're training your hands to do exactly the motions that you're going to do when the sewing machine comes along. Now, the third step here would be to draw it. And when you draw it, what I want you to do is not look at the design, because I don't want you to try and copy the design. But each of us has our own handwriting, and each of us has our own version of doing this design. So what's really cool about this is it's still random. You just crisscross the lines. If you get your stuff stuck into a corner, no worries. You just kind of zigzag your way out and keep going. And it makes this really cool looking quilt pattern that I call straight line stippling.
Okay, mine's not going to look anything like yours, but I'm in my Free Motion Mastery in a Month workbook. I've probably had this for 5 years, and you can see I'm at the very first blank page because I haven't practiced this before. Now, RaNae, is that where you include this red pen? Is that for what is that for?
That's a dry erase marker, so you could use that that's for using on the tracing sheets. But if you want to use, now turn the tracing sheet over so that you can't look at the design, because I don't want you to copy what I did.
Okay, but I'm just
going to
going
do
to
your own version. There you go, pencil, yeah. Okay, and then just keep the lines, no more than a couple of inches long, and just do your own squiggly wiggly version of straight line stippling.
So you don't care if things cross over?
They're supposed to cross. That's what knits the pattern together. And don't try to go in a line. Just kind of go in the middle and kind of bloom out from the center.
Okay.
That's the idea.
I feel
Glide
like
and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. You see, you're still doing that rhythm, right?
yes. I'm telling myself to glide and stop every time.
So one time I was at a show and I did a lecture about this, and a lady came by my booth the next day and she goes, I can't get you out of my head. All I hear is glide and stop, glide and stop. She was really funny. We were laughing.
I'm totally thinking that's going to happen today.
Okay, so now we're ready to quilt this. You've got you did your rhythm and speed from your from the quilting yoga. You got your muscle memory and coordination from tracing it. You now have a map of this design, because what's really important about drawing, and this is where a lot of people confuse what they're going to get out of drawing. Drawing is important to the process, quilting. But as you can see, Sue, you're only using one hand to draw.
Yes.
So you're not getting your hands to coordinate together. You're not learning the arm motions that you need to do quilting with. You've only trained one hand.
Right.
Right. So quilting is not, drawing is not the motion that you use when you quilt. So it is not teaching you the motion of quilting. But because you're looking at an empty page and your brain has to tell your hands where to go, it's creating a map of the design so that your brain can tell your hands where to go. So we have these 3 steps. We have rhythm and speed from the quilting yoga. We have muscle memory and coordination from the tracing, and we have a map of the design from the drawing.
Okay.
Now, when you go to quilt this, you'll be able to quilt this.
Okay.
Even if you've never done free motion quilting before, your body knows what to do first. Your brain knows what to do second. And when you go to the machine, you can quilt it.
I am so excited about this, RaNae, because I have a new long arm. It's been sitting out there in my other room for over 3 months now, and I've quilted one quilt.
Don't feel bad. I've had students who've had, who've bought long arms and have literally had them for 5, 6, 7 years and have not even quilted them. I mean, you see it at the show, it seems like such a great idea, then it comes and it invades your house. And suddenly you look at it and go, holy crap, what have I done? And it's big and scary and intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to just keep putting it off day by day by day by day by day by day by day. And suddenly years have gone by and every day that you procrastinate, you feel worse because you spent all this money, right? And it's sitting there gathering dust.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I'm always so excited when I can get somebody excited about free motion quilting and give them the tools. Like we do this little exercise where I show you how to get a perfectly even stitch, whether or not you have without a stitch regulator, because I show you how to get your machine and your body in rhythm with each other.
Yes, I can already feel that with the glide and stop, that I'm controlling my speed by moving with the motion and repeating that motion.
Right. And there's, you have a stitch regulator on your long arm. So that's going to control your stitch length. But for those of us who don't have stitch regulators, there's another little dimension to it, which is how do you find your comfortable body speed and then get the machine to run at the right speed for your body so that you always have an even stitch.
Yes, I don't like using the stitch regulator.
Okay, well then you're going to love this. It's page 95 in the book.
Perfect. Well, I need to spend some more time with free motion mastery in a month. Truly, 1 month, really, RaNae?
Yes. Well, so when I teach at a show or a store or a guild, I do a 1-day class, 6 hours. And I occasionally do this class online. I don't have another one on the calendar right now, but probably a little bit later in the fall I will. And when we start that class, I tell everybody, even if you've never done free motion quilting, by the end of this class, you will be quilting feathers with a perfectly even stitch. And they look at me like I just told them they would land on Mars.
Yes.
And by the end of the class, they look at me and they go, oh my gosh, I'm quilting feathers with a perfectly even stitch. And it's not hard to do when you start with the basic shape and build the motion into your body. Then it's just a question of repeating the motions. And so going at this way with motion first makes for an amazing learning experience. So in the 1-day class, 6 hours, we go as far as day 19 in the book.
Okay.
The reason I call it free motion mastery in a month is because, repetition is the thing that really makes things sink into you. And so the book is laid out in a 30-day, day-by-day, step-by-step thing. And it doesn't just say, here's a pattern, go practice. It says, here's the pattern we're going to do, and we're going to do these 3 steps, and this is what you're going to quilt on your block. It's set up to go from straight lines to feathers in 30 days. And everything builds on the thing before. Now, you can do it in 30 days. You can do it in 60. In the second edition, I even put in a fast track version. You can do it in a weekend.
Really?
The important thing is that you go in the right order so that everything that you do builds on what you did before. And it becomes a very effective and very efficient learning process because it's set up to work the way our brains and bodies learn. Which kind of brings me back to the positivity thing. And I just have to talk about this for just a second.
Absolutely.
Years ago, I came home from an event on a plane from Alabama or Arkansas. It was one of those Southern A states. And I sat down next to a man on the plane and we got talking, and it turns out that he was one of the world's leading authorities on the physiology of how our brains learn. Not just how do you remember things, but what actually happens to the chemicals in the cells, in the juices, and all that stuff in your brain that makes you remember stuff. And I remember asking him, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned? And he said, there's an emotional component to learning.
Really?
And this is so important because if you think back to when you were in school, think about the class you hated the most. You'd walk up with that math paper and you'd be so proud you finished it, and then you hand it to the teacher, and what would happen? She would look over it, she'd get out that red pen, and she'd go, wrong, 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 wrong.
Yeah.
And at that moment, your mood went, and not only did that make you hate math, but your brain at that point goes, ooh, icky, uncomfortable chemicals going around in my brain. I'm not going to connect those neurons together because this makes me feel bad.
Yes.
And you're literally turn off the learning process. The minute that you make somebody feel bad about something that they've learned or tried to learn, your brain shuts off. So when I'm in a classroom and my ladies look at something, they just quilt and they go, oh my gosh, this sucks. I stop the whole class and they get this lecture, because if you do that, you literally are shutting down the physical process of your brain wiring memory together.
Okay.
On the other hand,
Oh, good.
so what I tell them is, look at everything you did right. I don't care if there's wobbles in the line, right? You got an even stitch, you got a smooth line, you got sharp points. Anything that they did right, we start with that. We
Yeah.
look at, oh, you got the, and the thing is, like, they'll have an even stitch, they'll have a smooth line, they'll get the architecture right. I don't care if there's a couple of wobbles in the lines. This is the first time that they tried to do this, right? But 90% of what they did was absolutely perfect.
I love it.
And if you focus on what you did right, you are reinforcing to your brain that you want more of that. And you're celebrating that you actually did something right. Okay. Mm. And then the next step is really important. The next step, you say, and next time I'm going to do this differently. Okay. If you say next time, don't do that next time, you've just told yourself to do it again, because our brains don't hear no. If I say don't forget your keys, you're going to forget your keys.
Yes.
If I say remember your keys, you're going to remember your keys. So you'll look at it like, I'll look at a little string of pearls bubble, right? And I'll say, wow, this time that circle was really round and the stitches were nice and even. And next time I'm going to make the overstitching a little more accurate.
Yeah.
And all of that is positive, not only in the sense of, happy, but also in the sense of a positive, actionable statement. If I say, don't do that, your brain goes, well, yeah, but what do you want me to do? So you just have to tell your brain what you want it to do. So you say, this is what I did right. This is what I did. This is right. This is what I did right. And next time, this is what I'm going to do differently.
I love it.
And when you learn to use your brain that way, it's amazing what happens to the learning process. And you just feel better anyway, too. And this is eating, Pollyanna, this is science, okay? This is science.
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely. RaNae, I read an article today about the power of yet.
Ooh.
I have not learned how to do this yet.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this yet.
Right.
Right.
Along with that is something that I love to say, even when I'm starting out a project. I remember years ago, I wanted to curate an exhibit of ceramics from Uzbekistan, and I had no clue how I was going to do it. But I started talking to people, and every time I talked to somebody about it, I said, I'm putting together an exhibit of ceramics from Uzbekistan. I'm in the process of doing it. And the thing is, if I go to them and say, I want to do this, it says, I'm not doing it, and I need you to do it for me, right? But if I say, I'm doing this, then it says, I am doing this, and I am inviting you to get on my, get in my car and come with me.
Yes.
And that it goes so beautifully with yet, because you can say, I haven't learned to do free motion quilting yet, but I'm starting with straight lines today.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love that I'm doing this, which is, it's also a form of a future tense that we use in language, Tomorrow I'm going to the movies. We say it all the time. But by saying I'm going, we're already stating it as if it's in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important, because we can only act in the present. So if we talk about our future as if it's in the present, then we are creating our future.
Oh my goodness. We speak the same language, RaNae. I am so
really
excited that you've come back into my world. I would love to collaborate, to do something together. I'd love to actually see where you live and come to New York and visit with you.
Give me a heads up so I can clean my studio before you get it.
But there are women all over this world that are now excited about working with you. And with the power of the internet, with the power of Zoom, they can do that. What is the best way for somebody that wants to learn free motion mastery in a month? Where do they get started? How do they find you?
The easiest thing to do is you can Google my name. The spelling's a little weird, so you might not, but just Google free motion mastery in a month. It'll
Perfect.
take you,
And
or
I
just
did
like
put the link
Fremont.
in the comments.
Yeah, freemotionmasterinamonth.com. It'll take you to a page that explains how the system works, and that's my website. You can buy the book and toolkit on my store. You can also get a recorded class that goes along with it if you'd like to.
Good.
I do some online classes. I actually have one coming up next week, which is not the quilting part, but it addresses the question I get asked most often when somebody's at the end and they go, oh my gosh, now that I can quilt, like after one class, right? Now that I can quilt, how do I know what to quilt where? And I created this
Oh,
class called Layers and Lines, How to Create a Quilting Design.
okay.
I think Sue's going to put a link in the comments below.
I have your website linked. Will they find it on your website, or do we have another link you want me to share?
There's
Did
a
you
link
send
in
it to
the
me by
email that I
email?
sent you.
I'll put that in now.
If you go to my website and you look at you can go to shop and you'll see online classes, or if you can go into the workshops, there's also online classes. If you go to my calendar, you'll see this coming up. It's next
I've got the link right here, and I will put all of your links in the chat so people can find you very easily. So I'm doing that now. So tell me what Layers and Lines is all about, because it sounds like I might almost be there after I put some work into the quilting yoga.
Well, so what it does is, it's, you finish a quilt top and you're like, yay, I'm done. And then you go, oh crap, I still got to quilt this thing.
Yes.
Knowing how to look at the quilt and understand what it's telling you about how it wants to be quilted, that's what this class addresses. We go through a series of questions that prompt you to see things in your quilt and know what those things mean in terms of how to treat different areas of your quilt in different ways, different styles of quilt in different ways. It really gives you a roadmap to looking at any quilt and knowing how to quilt it.
Oh my goodness, that's exactly what I need.
People take this class and they just come to me afterwards and they say, I'll never look at a quilt the same way again.
Oh, I love it.
And it kind of goes along with that 6 basic shapes sheet, because if you look at the 6 basic shapes, that's going to have you looking at the figures that are used to quilt, right? But the layers and lines will give you a framework for looking at the structure of the quilt and what designs were put where and why they were used in that way. And so the two things go together. Like one is kind of the building blocks, and one of them is the scaffolding or the framework for
Okay,
finishing.
so we have the how to and we have the what to.
Yes, that's perfect way to put it.
Okay, good. Good.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
I'm
so
super excited about diving into your content, RaNae, because when I look at that piece of blank fabric that I've put on my long arm, I just don't know what to do. And
yes.
I feel as though now I'm going to go out and practice the glide and stop. Is that what you said? Was it glide?
Glide and stop, glide and stop. And next time you're standing in the grocery store line and the person in front of you got in the shortest line, right? And then the person in front of you pulls out 27 coupons. Perfect time. Glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop, glide and stop. And the quilting yoga is particularly good for long armers because you do have to quilt with your whole body. I mean, think of your long arm machine as a ballroom dance partner.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's
use your whole
amazing.
body, quilt from your knees, and use them. That you're doing this with your. Don't freeze up and try to do it with your arms because you'll end yourself up at the chiropractor so fast.
I
Dance,
love it. Now,
dance with your long arm machine, and it will quilt with you.
that is perfect. Quilt with your dance with your long arm machine. Is okay. I have to, those are words of wisdom. I'm going to tell you one of my takeaways from today.
Okay.
And this, I think, is going to it just proves how amazing your mind works and in teaching that motion. Touching the fingers, touching the thumbs. I never thought about my non-dominant hand being totally independent of my other hand. By putting them together and training that non-dominant hand to do whatever my dominant hand is doing, that was a light bulb that is just glowing right now.
I'm so
And
glad it helped.
oh my goodness, it just proves to me that I knew you were the right person for me to train me in learning these free motion shapes. I just have to do the work and spend the time with these basic lessons. And that one lesson you gave us today, the glide and stop lesson for that beautiful filler pattern that we're now going to be able to create, I am thrilled that that is going to be step one.
I have to show you what that looks like quilted out.
Oh, please do.
So
You're going to share that on your second.
no, it's on my laptop.
Okay, so you can share.
Yep, it's shared.
All right, I'm missing it. Let me see. It must be behind my main screen.
I think you still have the tabletop highlighted.
Yep. And I'm still not seeing.
I think you need to, okay. Let me unshare it and see if this will work again. Do you have, so you have me spotlighted on the laptop, right?
I don't have the laptop up here. Is anybody else seeing the laptop? Go ahead and let me know in the
But
comments.
just put my face back up.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, now let me see if this will do it. The host has spotlighted your video. Okay, so are you seeing it now?
I'm not.
Okay, well, everybody,
Okay, that's all right.
you're
What
trying.
we can do is
Try it yourself. Just go quilt it and you'll see how pretty it is.
excellent. Well, I did see a quilt that you quilted with this design earlier, and I love it's a great little filler design. You said you can't quilt yourself into a corner.
If you get stuck in a corner, just zigzag your way over to someplace else and keep going. Just
I love it.
crisscross right over what you already did. Nobody will know.
Perfect, perfect. Well, RaNae, this has been so enlightening, so much fun. Our whole conversation about your menu of fun, that was really something very special that I think we can all work on. Are you going to write a book on the menu of fun? Because I think it needs to happen.
You know, I only came up with the idea this week. Give me a chance to finish the 3 other books in the chute first.
Oh, that's a brand new idea for you.
Yeah, like I said, this is just something that I've been thinking a lot about these last few weeks as I've just sort of been going through these life reset moments. So
Yes,
yeah,
well, I
we'll
think
see
it's
how it plays
brilliant.
out. I think it probably needs a little bit more development still.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. Keep working on it. I'm going to, I'll be your first tester to see how it influences my life. I think it's similar to a gratitude journal. It's similar to journaling for those of us that are not people who journal. Um, Having that structure, just a little check boxes every day, taking a menu, taking that idea of a menu and taking from the menu what you want to partake of that day. What area of your life can you inject a little bit of fun, or can you find the fun even in those areas? You had bookkeeping on there, you had business jobs that needed to be done, but finding the fun and how it enhances your life to get those jobs done is brilliant. So I'm super excited that we had this time today to share our love of quilting, but also just our love and joy in our life. And I'm so excited that you are back in my life again. I can't wait to do more quilting yoga, more training with free motion mastery in a month. And I am determined to master this new long arm. And now I feel empowered to do that. So thank you, RaNae. This has been so much fun.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I'm really happy to be reconnected with you too. And I look forward to having many more opportunities to share ideas and get together, and who knows what will come out of it.
Absolutely, RaNae. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. When anyone wants to reach out to RaNae, where is your biggest presence on social media? Where are they going to find you on Facebook, Instagram? What's your favorite social media channel?
You can find me, if you just Free Motion Mastery in a Month will find me on YouTube. It will find me on Instagram. I also have RaNae Quilts on Instagram, which where I put more of my personal stuff. I kind of, you know, my latest camping adventure doesn't always go into Free Motion Mastery in a Month. Um, and then my website, and if you want to join my newsletter and get my try to make them weekly. They don't always happen, but you can go to the contact page on my website and put your name on the list there.
Excellent, RaNae. I will spotlight this in my newsletter this week as well. So if you missed writing down any of those links, I'll make sure the links go in my newsletter. But you're going to have this recording on YouTube and you can refer back to it anytime you need to find these links for RaNae. So thank you for joining us on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. This has been so much fun and I can't wait to do it again. Take care, RaNae.
Bye, Sue. Have a great week.
Thank you.